So, I have been waiting for a special occasion to wear these earrings that my sister gave me, but seeing as I don't leave my house, I've decided that you all are the special occasion. So, like many of us, I watched The Social Dilemma, which is a documentary on Netflix that examines the technological giants that have been created over the past decade or so, the effect of social media on individuals, on communities, the evolutionary handicap we all seem to have, and the fact that our brains have not caught up to the fact that we have the ability to know thousands and thousands, in many cases tens of thousands of people. A lot of the documentary, I will say, is things that I would argue we're already aware of in terms of comparison and bullying and radicalization of people's political beliefs. This, that, and the other. I'll leave a link to Tiffany Ferg's internet analysis of the video down below. So I think she did a good job of really getting into the nitty gritty. But what I found really interesting about it in that moment was that how do I phrase this? I don't want to make it sound like I'm not like other consumers, since a big part of the social dilemma is acknowledging that if you are using a service that is free, that means we are the product. Our eyeballs, impressions on ads, everything really comes back to this idea of surveillance capitalism, which is using all of our data and information to give us more and more specifically targeted ads, so then we will buy things. As someone who has never bought anything from a Facebook ad or an Instagram ad or what have you, I went through part of the documentary feeling like, okay, so like these are kind of like evil corporations, and oh wow, I had no idea that there were that many loopholes in terms of selling my data. Okay, maybe I need to, but you know what? At least if my eyes are on the ad, that does not mean that necessarily I have bought something. And then I took a look at my bookshelf. Now, I think it was Books and Lala who first did a video, kind of a challenge about Facebook recommends my books, or no, it was Instagram ads, buying books based off Instagram ads. So I'll link that below because that was a fun video. But while I have never bought a book because of an ad, I do have a number of books that I bought because of social media. Rather, that they are books I bought to support artists, creators, and writers that I never would have known about without social media. And that's kind of like where I waffle back and forth, because while I absolutely have lost countless hours to mindless scrolling, I have absolutely compared myself to other people, I've absolutely had to fact check memes, because just because someone did an aesthetically pleasing infographic doesn't mean that it's accurate. I also can't help but think about the numbers of activists and educators and artists and writers that I never would have learned about if it had not been for social media. But to start with the books, the very first book, I should say, that I got because of Instagram specifically was Adulthood is a Myth, a Sarah Scribbles collection. Now, this is the first of Sarah Anderson's comics. She actually came out with a long form comic in a totally different style about the relationship between a vampire and a werewolf that I will be buying. I just don't have it yet. But she has 3 of this style. Adulthood is a Myth, Big Mushy Happy Lump, and Herding Cats. Now, for fear of sounding in any way dismissive of her work, I would say these comics kind of fall into the more relatable category. They often are 2-panel or 4-panel examples, things talking about relationships and stress, getting trapped in clothing, walking in heels. They often have reoccurring characters of her boyfriend. They often have reoccurring characters of this little small bunny guy that it often serves as a foil for a lot of her stories. And they're just really light, fun, mid-20 something, I'm assuming that's how they seem to read to me. Comics about being an adult, being a lump, trying to herd cats. And there's no like longer narrative in that. But as someone who was looking at a lot of these online for free, this is a series of books that I got because, one, I wanted to support her because almost every single comic she's posted I've loved, but also I knew that by buying these books I would be able to see comics that I haven't been able to see before. And I know there often tends to be a dip off between people who are willing to consume something, which I know is such like marketing language, will work with me, something for free, but then would they be willing to pay for it? I see a lot of this conversation around people who post certain type of content on their free YouTube channel, but a completely different type of content on the Patreon, versus people who are posting the same things they post here on the Patreon, but on a different timeline or with a different level of interaction. And so I just wanted to bring that up because I think these books in particular are the ones that I could see myself. I would never unhaul them because I genuinely enjoy flipping through them and I really like her work, but I could see an argument against not getting them. Because, you can't miss what you never knew in the first place. And she has, years and years of really amazing comics, many of which are in these books, on her Instagram. But if you are someone who is a fan of these things, like these are the type of stuff that I'll bring in the car because I no longer have the stomach to read while in motion, I would recommend Sarah Anderson's comics. On kind of the in-between side of illustration and writing, I have Am I There Yet? A Loop-de-Loop Zigzagging Journey to Adulthood by Mari Andrew. Now, Mari Andrew is someone who will often do longer form essays with illustrations as a part of them. I believe her Instagram, the first things that I saw from her were less about the essays and more about, for example, images like this. So this is pretty self-explanatory. You don't really need an essay to go along with it, although I would be interested in reading something like that. So this book kind of goes back and forth between that. Sometimes she'll have just images like this, or I really like these where she does them based on cities. I find that really fun because she's traveled to a lot of different places. And then she'll also have here, like a whole essay with only a couple illustrations about falling in love and this, that, and the other. And if you go to her Instagram, which is by Mari Andrews, you'll see a combination of illustrations that she'll just have like a short caption for, and this is what it is. And you can interpret the meaning for yourself, and you can think of your own versions of it. Or other times she'll have these big essays in the captions. Essays as captions on Instagram is something I often go back and forth with because I have absolutely done it. There are times I found it very valuable. And also there are times where I was like, is this, not like, why don't you make a blog? I don't mean that. But rather, is this what Instagram is becoming now? As opposed to a solely visual platform where I am here mainly to look at a picture. Actually, the picture is just what hooks your attention so I can get you to read my writing. I know that Mari is not the only person who does big essays in the captions, and as I said, she doesn't do them for every single illustration, but I want to do this book next because I felt like it was an in-between between the purely images, these are comics, so they're 3 to 5 panels, to longer form illustrations, some are 2-page, some are 1, and have those illustrations interspersed with essays. This, to me, I'm not going to give it up because I do enjoy it, but it was kind of a mixed bag. I feel that there were certain essays that were stronger than others, and while I definitely enjoyed all of the illustrations, and there were more illustrations in here that I had not seen, and I don't know if that's simply because I haven't been following Mari online as long as I've been following Sarah, or rather she was putting new things in here, but she has another book and I don't think I'm going to get it, which probably speaks ill of this one, but I really don't mean that. I think this was definitely a great buy. It's just that I would rather continue to look at her illustrations, the ones she chooses to post online. I love this one, Bubble of Heartbreak. So relatable. I'd rather continue to look at the illustrations she posts online and then read the captions that she chooses to post along with it if she's going to do an essay, rather than read another book. I think I would need to see, I don't know. I don't know where I would be able to decide, or I don't know how I'd be able to decide if I wanted to buy more books from her, but maybe if the captions were more moving. It's just, this one was, some I love, I reread all the time, and it's not a book that you need to read in a particular order, which is great, and some I don't. So kind of in between on this one, but I think it serves the purpose that I'm trying to tell. And the final book that I bought from an online person that I still have is What a Time to Be Alone, The Slumflower's Guide to Why You Are Already Enough. This one, the first time I read it, I actually didn't like it because just from like seeing the length and seeing it online and this is someone, Chidera, who I have, oh my gosh, I've listened to so many interviews and podcasts. She's really challenged the way I've thought about relationships and finances and liberation. As with many people I read, I don't agree with every single thing she says, but she was the first person that I knew of to talk about a certain type of individual rebellion that I found really compelling, and also that took into account a lot of the capitalistic nature of some of the things that we consider to be revolutionary. So this book, one, Chidera is an illustrator, so that's really relevant. And you should know that when she designed it to be a book that you could take photos of and post it on Instagram, or take photos of a page and share with your friends. Like, the graphic design elements of it were completely intentional. And I think that makes a lot of sense, considering that she first, even though she'd been writing for a long time, she first really came to prominence as the Slumflower on Instagram. So talk about know your audience. I mean, every single page in this book, if you could focus please, is a work of art that has valid information on it. The reason I say when I first read it took me a minute to like it is because just based on the way that I had been hearing her speak and the way that I had seen her other writings, I was expecting a more traditional, like, Roxane Gay, bad feminist. I was expecting a longer collection of essays and actually less time and space dedicated to the visual elements of this. But I did genuinely enjoy it. I do enjoy it. It is, again, like similar to the other two books, it's a book that is broken up into chunks and chapters, but you do not have to read it in that way. And you can just open up to a page that has a very valuable lesson. Like I said, I think this book is full of valuable content, and read this. And something that I like about this is that in the times that I have reread chunks or gone back and forth, things hit me in a different way. And that's one of the reasons why I love books like this that are talking about overall, kind of life things, because you don't need to sit down and dedicate, a whole week or two to read it all at once to get something new out of it. And she absolutely achieved in her visual goals, I believe. This book is beautiful, and almost every page feels like its own independent piece of art, its own independent message. And she did all of the artwork for this as well. I love that. I love the fact that she and Mari are both writers and illustrators / graphic designers, visual artists. I think that involves, an incredible amount of skill. And the same with Sarah as well. I mean, of course, she writes all of the jokes and all the punchlines and stories for her work. It's just, a different skill set, I think, writing, a 3 to 5 panel story for something like this, and then writing longer essays for something like that. So I wanted to use this idea of discussing the social dilemma documentary to talk about these books, because I really enjoy all of them. And whether or not I'm going to rush to buy something else by these creators, I don't know, but that does not diminish the value that these books have for me, the experiences that I had reading, the beauty of them, all of them being in terms of covers, in terms of design. Also, I forgot to mention, but I love how fuzzy and soft Sarah's books are. I don't know if you can kind of hear that, but as someone who's kind of very tactile, I really enjoy that. They're all works of art, visual art, as well as being works of literary art. And these are things I most likely never would have found without social media. Now, the social dilemma has a variety of people in it who have very different opinions about individual consumer habits, larger political ideas, taxation purposes, legislation, all these different ways to make social media more equitable, less harmful, do more of what it was originally intended to do. But I will say that even though I'm taking some of them to heart, I am being more mindful of my data. I am also trying to be very, very hesitant about assuming a level of integrity from something online just because it's someone I happen to follow. I think some of us kind of fall into these ideas where we're trusting influencers or trusting people we don't know in real life simply because it seems that they did the research. But no matter what, I feel like I will always be online in some form, whether it's like this with the lovely people I've gotten to meet so far, or whether it's ordered to be introduced to other writers, creatives, and artists. But no matter what, I think it's something that we should continue discussing moving forward. So I hope that some of these books you found interesting. I'll leave all of these Instagram creators, writers, authors, artists in the description below. And I'll also leave some other people who I don't actually have books by them, but I plan on buying them, or I want to buy them, and I'll probably get them this year. And I hope next time you're on social media, maybe now as you're watching this, you look at it a little differently. And I think that if we all apply some more nuance and more critical thinking, frankly, and just a little bit more grace to how we handle these platforms, I would like to believe that we will be okay.